Well, hello, beautiful people, and welcome back to M4L Academy. I'm Missy Karwowski, Director of M4LA, and I am so glad that you have joined us for this incredibly important conversation. Today, we are talking about data privacy. Let's see, privacy probably doesn't feel like you actually have much of that in the world today, right? I mean, how many times have you thought of something only to have ads show up on your social media for a new crock pot that I didn't realize I talked about? Yeah, weird, right? I mean, if you've ever wondered what really happens to all those clicks, swipes, and I agree buttons that your kids and you hit every single day, well, you're in the right place. Our guest today is privacy advocate Eric Meter from privacyacademy.com, whose own journey started with a TikTok meme that hit just a little too close to home. His story is a wake up call for all of us, and I promise you, you will never look at your smart fridge or your child's Chromebook the same way again. So grab your favorite beverage and maybe put a sticker over that webcam. And let's dive in. Welcome back to class. Please welcome to the conversation Eric Meter.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you're here. When I first met you and heard your story, I was genuinely blown away. If you don't mind, can we start out with that? And if you don't mind sharing your story with our listeners about how technology impacted your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, just to give you some background, my father had been giving me some seeds of knowledge about this for a long time. So, my father's been writing about surveillance, how it affects people for over a decade now. And about 5 years ago, I was in a pretty bad place. I was very depressed. I was very anxious all the time. At the time, I was studying cooking. I was in a culinary school, and I also worked at a steakhouse at the time. So one day I was having a particularly bad day. I go to school, I go to work, and the whole day I'm just listening to this same song, Rotten Apple by Alice in Chains. It's a depressing song on repeat. And then I come home from work and I do what most kids do when they decompress. I just pulled up TikTok and I started scrolling and scrolling and scrolling until I came across a meme that basically slapped me across the face. And I was aware that you're shown stuff that is, based off of your interests. But what I saw was just unbelievable. It was a meme that said, when you're a line cook and you listen to Rotten Apple 24/7 and you want to kill yourself. And the amount of coincidences for me, someone who's a line cook, to, get that after listening to Rotten Apple 24/7 all day, that's just unbelievable. And it actually shook me up so much that I uninstalled the app. And that's what started my privacy journey with Glenn. And so after my research, it's not far fetched at all. You look at your phone. Your phone is a backdoor surveillance weapon, basically. It can see that I'm going to a culinary school. It sees that I spend all my time at a restaurant. It sees my photos. It listens to my conversations. Maybe it can read my texts to my friends where I'm saying, "Oh, I'm feeling really depressed today." It sees Spotify. Spotify's on my phone, and it creates this profile for me that's extremely powerful. And so, if you look at like propaganda in the past, you have like the printing press, or you have radio or television. Those were very powerful tools because that allowed people to spread deceit and lies in a massive way. I mean, those really blew up what propaganda is. But nowadays, you're looking at something that's mass individual manipulation. So, for example, they have the agenda of, polar bears aren't real. Let's say that's the agenda. Instead of saying that on the news to everyone, it knows, okay, this is Eric Meter, this is his interests, and this is how I can personalize the message of polar bears aren't real to him in a way that he'll actually believe it. And I think that's one of the reasons why the youth is becoming so radicalized.
Yes, I agree. I think that one thing that you have talked about is that you feel like the youth is under attack as well. I kind of see this radicalization as part of the attack, frankly. But can you talk a little bit more about what's actually happening inside classrooms? Because you mentioned all these other tech that we probably almost everyone has on their phone, quite frankly, or on some device. But sometimes I think parents forget that the technology that is in schools and on those screens aren't excluded from this. So talk to me a little bit about what sort of technology you experienced in school and how did that shape your relationship with screens?
Absolutely. Well, I think if you want to talk about my experience personally, when I went to high school, we all got Chromebooks. And I think that's a great example of, okay, what's this initiative to get Chromebooks? If you look at Google, Google has paid billions of dollars to different companies just to have Google Chrome be the search engine that, or Google to be the search engine that people use. And so they're trying to infiltrate all areas of people's lives, like kids and adults too.
I feel like that is so true, and it's interesting you say, making Google the search engine that everyone uses. We were talking with another person, Dr. Jared Cooney Horvath, and he was explaining the concept of how for big tech, and a lot of it by getting these devices in schools at a young age, it's essentially training consumers for the future, which I've seen and recognized that in the food industry, but I hadn't really thought about it as far as technology. But what are some areas that you would see? And let's talk one. Let's, if you can, touch on like the data side of it too. What are some ways that that could go wrong?
Oh, there's so many different ways. I mean, first of all, if we're talking about our youth in the school system, our worldview is shaped by the information that we consume. I mean, first of all, I think worldview is determined by your critical thinking skills, your emotional awareness, and those are skills that have intentionally not been trained to the youth. So they're kind of at a disadvantage in that sense. But if you look at just information, quote unquote facts, if you hear, like, let's say you heard I killed someone, you would think differently about everything that I've done. You know what I mean? And that's an extreme example, but whoever controls the information can control people's worldview. That's the whole point of propaganda. So with a very detailed program like AI, the screen could change by the time you're scrolling on The book isn't like 1984 from George Orwell. It's whatever the AI reads and writes, and whatever the person reads on the screen. So it could be anything, and that really opens the door for a lot of stuff. And to your point of AI is good, what Glenn and I say is with Privacy Academy, we're not necessarily saying, throw everything away, become Amish. That's not how technology works. Obviously, we're not going to go back in history. I think a good way to equate it is like the invention of fire. Fire is very dangerous. And then every invention after it is how do we control the fire? It's not how do we let it spread more. And I think that's what we need to think of with modern technology. We have some great tools, but they're currently designed to be used like a burning fire that will keep spreading. We need to contain it and use it for the good of people. And I've got a good story about AI that I think would be important to share too when it comes to youth. This is another thing that really concerns me about the youth is the blind trust. And it's kind of what you're talking about with Google. They have it in their systems, they trust it. I was hanging out with one of my friends and he told me, he's like, I've got a really hot Spanish teacher. And I was like, okay, that's cool, man. And he pulled it up and it was an AI. It was an AI program teaching him Spanish. And I thought he was joking with me. But then throughout the
Oh
night,
my.
he would call AI and have conversations. And he's like, yeah, I spend most of my time all day talking to it. And like, I could tell he genuinely had feelings for AI. And it sounds unbelievable. I really didn't believe it when I saw it, but this is the truth, especially when you're looking at young kids. They're going to start actually having feelings. I mean, it's going to tap into the empathy where they say, okay, maybe it is real. Maybe they do feel this way, but it's just words on the screen.
Wow, that I mean, I'm sure you have at least heard of the movie
Yep.
Her, and
Exactly what
that
I thought
just
of.
screams it. Oh my goodness, that is so terrifying. That actually brings me right into some of the areas where we are concerned at Moms for Liberty with where we're seeing certain types of education technology and that includes AI, how it's being used. Research showing that 96% of school tech exposes personal data, which is absolutely horrific when you realize there are thousands of school tech programs out there being used. What can parents and teachers be doing to fight against that, in order to be able to protect data, to protect our children against making emotional connections with a robot?
Yeah.
Like, what should we be doing?
Well, to your data point, based off of, the further I've gone into it, the more I see, yeah, they are taking everything they can get. So I'm not surprised by that. They're centralizing everything. One business sells to the next business and they sell to another business. Somehow or another, the data gets everywhere. So I really have trouble trusting most things that say they're private. That's one of the biggest things that we do is we really have to do a big audit process. But if you're a parent watching and you're asking yourself, how can my child be private in the school system? How can they avoid these things? It might have to be something like where you look for private schools, different education options. I'm a big fan of homeschooling. I don't have children yet, but if I did, I would definitely homeschool them. I think you absolutely have to do something about it one way or another. At least talk to them.
And one of the things that we have been is a common thread, I would say, throughout all of our topics at M4L Academy is the importance of having that conversation with your kids. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, and so I want to come back to that. The manipulation. There's research showing that Google searches, which we don't think of as AI necessarily, or didn't until more recently, did actually legitimately change elections with their autocomplete search terms. How do we, what can parents be doing? What can teachers be doing to help encourage or fight against that if it is in their schools? What should they do to encourage that critical thinking? Are there any tips, techniques, or different ways to work with the tools?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where our youth needs to learn how to critically think and how to handle their emotions. That's how they're able to see through it. I actually have a whole program around this topic where I say, okay, first, your child needs to be self aware. They need to know uh, about themselves, what they're thinking. And that's actually the second point that I talk about is you have to be aware of your subconscious because your words make up your reality. And especially with the level of propaganda that exists nowadays, your words can change. Like they can really just ingrain different words in your, like the whole 6-7. I mean, that's what's popular now. Any kid's laughing about it. And I know memes are funny, but I think they are used very aggressively in ways. I mean, that's a very innocent example, but it's training people to think something's funny. Like if you look at my meme that I had, that's what I consider something that falls into relatability. So I see the 2 points. I see, okay, I'm a line cook. Wow, yeah, that's true. I'm listening to Rotten Apple 24/7. Yeah, that's true. And then the third point must be true. So I must want to kill myself. I am feeling depressed. Maybe I do really want to kill myself. That's an extreme example. Then the third point that I talk about is the emotional awareness, being able to detach, being able to understand how different emotions affect your worldview. And then after that, talking about skepticism, because that's something that I think is really not taught enough nowadays. And then just talking to them about how these systems actually work, how they target the youth. I mean, there's articles on this. There's one on Forbes that's fantastic. It's called Facebook manipulated 689,003 of its users for science. There's one, I don't know if it's by Forbes or the Guardian, but it talks about how Facebook admitted that they profiled teens that they deem insecure, and they sell that data to advertise. And I think the iceberg goes much deeper than that. I mean, if you look at any power seeker throughout history, you look at Hitler, Stalin, Mao, they go after the youth because they're vulnerable. And they know that if the older generation passes and the younger generation is brainwashed, I guess, for lack of a better word, then they have full control in that sense. So that's why the youth has always been targeted, and I really hate to see that. Well, that's one of the reasons why I'm so adamant about this.
I can't blame you at all, not only with your personal experience. What really got me going was this attack on our youth because I thought, and in particular, it was like the whole gender ideology thing.
Yep.
And that to me just was I mean, can't we all just get behind protecting children? And then seeing how deep the rot goes in so many areas. I want to touch back to what you started to say about data and how these platforms, including school data platforms, are selling this data on our children because that's really the biggest product in today's world, right? Is our data. I run into this argument in my circles. Well, either one of two arguments: either I'm not doing anything wrong, it doesn't matter, or what does it matter? Why should I try to hide anything or to change anything because they have all my data anyway? So can you talk to me about that mindset? How is that fair? Is all hope lost because they all have our data?
People say that all the time, and whenever they say that, I'm not to be offensive, but they don't understand what's going on behind the scenes. The reason that they want your data, the reason why they've created a net of surveillance, like a smart home, a smart fridge, a smart vacuum, whatever, everything's smart. And that's because data is only important when it's fresh. I mean, like, let's think about it in war terms, right? let's say, hey, I saw your enemy was in this building 3 years ago. Like, it doesn't matter, you know. So if we use my example, that that propaganda that I saw, where it's, line cook, rotten apple, you want to kill yourself, that happened to me that day. If I saw that meme now, I wouldn't even really think about it, even though that was me like 5 years ago. Fresh data is what matters. They want to know your location at all times because they can control that. They want to know what you like, what you believe. That way they can control that. And if you want to go far enough down the rabbit hole, that ties into the whole social credit system, where it's not just about surveillance, it's not just about manipulation, but it's how do we train you like a dog, where your action, maybe you get a fine from the like your central bank digital currency. Maybe you're not allowed to shop at this store. Maybe you can't use this electric car. Maybe your carbon score is too high. And so it's all about control at that point. And so data is absolutely the most important thing. You can cut off the supply of data right now, and that will change everything.
That's what I was going to ask. So, what would be the first thing that you would recommend? So, what could people be doing right now to help limit the data collection on their families?
Absolutely. So the first thing I would always say to people, this is the lowest hanging fruit. Just make a list of everything in your house that's smart and ask yourself, do I really need a fridge that can scroll on Twitter? You know, does my toilet need to tell me the weather today or stuff like that? You can make that list, and then start going through it. And you guys need to get webcam covers and microphone blockers. There is a huge industry. It's awful to talk about, but people hack into these web cameras and they try to find photos of people naked, like in front of their computers naked. And especially if you have kids, you want to put those on those schools. I mean, that's a really low hanging fruit. Go to the school board and say, why do these not have webcam covers on every device? Do you want to put that risk on all of our students? So webcam covers, microphone blockers, that's got to be the number one, I would say.
I will say I have fought, I feel like I'm like half in the surveillance world and half out because I have a smartphone. I of course have a computer but I never got any of the smart devices. I don't We briefly considered a smart fridge. I don't have
The
the
vacuum. Yep.
vacuum and though like an Alexa. I never got anything like that. But is what can people do for these other if you do have these devices? Because some of it I feel like it's almost impossible. I mean, having a smartphone, some parents argue that is absolutely critical for their kids.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's play this one out actually, because nowadays there's an app for everything and a different type of platform for teachers to communicate for every single extracurricular class, teacher, all of it. So how could someone even get through a school year if they don't have a smart device like that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, and I love the approach that you said, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's absolutely how you need to do it. If you jump into the deep end, you're just gonna throw up your hands and give up before you even get into it. So you want 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You want to go at a pace that works for you, and the end result doesn't mean you're gonna go Amish. There's solutions for everything. Like there are so many. Like I'm on a Linux computer. This is more advanced. This is not something you'd start on day one. I de-googled my own phone, so this is a private phone. Like I could run Facebook on this much more private than if I had it on an iPhone. And so what we say at Privacy Academy is, you want 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like you said, but you want the foot out to keep growing. You want to keep making steps day by day, where it says, okay, I'm going to learn, the webcam cover. That's a great thing. Maybe this week all you're going to do is cover all the webcams, put all the microphone blockers in. Maybe next you're going to learn how to switch to a private email or set up a password manager. That's how you want to do it. You don't want to jump in the deep end. Last thing on this rant that I'm going to go on is uh, the important point there is you want privacy software that is open source, because, for example, Apple is closed source, meaning it's like a car with a hood, right? The code is underneath the hood. They're closed source. They say Apple is private, but we're not going to let you look under the hood. Open source means we're private, here's the hood open, and then you can audit it yourself. And there are tons of teams of security researchers that go into these projects and read every line of code and make sure that they're doing exactly what they say. So basically, you don't want to trust a company. You want zero trust in privacy. Really, you want to be able to audit them.
That's a very interesting point that I think a lot of people nowadays I feel like we've been duped or conditioned. That's, I think, the better word. I was trying to think of the right word for it, to just believe that, well, they're the expert, so they know it better than us. And I'm not gonna lie, like I'm not perfect in every, or I'm not the expert in everything, but it's good. It's always good to trust but verify, right? Like
Yep.
be a little bit suspicious. It is great to know there are solutions out there from people that we can trust, that are have been vetted and are available to us. So that's fantastic. I do want to get clarity. So you're saying that on these messaging apps from schools, like, gosh, I can't even think of all of them now. There's like GroupMe, and that's the only one I can think of at the moment. But I know there's like four different messaging apps. So the parents would still be able to use those because sometimes they're required
Oh
to
yeah.
get them for these schools. So they'd be able to use these apps even on the de-Googled
Yeah,
phones.
basically you could do anything that you could do on like an Android phone. Like I could put TikTok on this. I mean,
Mm.
I wouldn't want to. It wouldn't
Yeah, I wouldn't want to
be
do
as
that.
bad as like if I put it on an iPhone, but yeah, you can use basically anything an Android can.
Oh, that is very cool and very encouraging because I think some parents just aren't going to want to give up some of those apps, quite frankly.
Yep.
Okay, so let's go back to something, talking again about the tech addiction that you experienced, because that is what we're one of the things that we are really seeing in today's world, both with students and with parents. And we are fighting for, we've seen cell phone bans in throughout many states, which is fantastic. But there's still these one-on-one devices that I've read so many stories of how computer screens, like these games can that young kids are given in schools, leads to tech addiction. So as someone who has experienced it yourself, what advice would you give to parents who see their children struggling with the same thing?
Definitely. Well, first of all, I wouldn't blame them. What they're facing is something that has had I don't know how much, probably billions, dumped into it of psychological research from psychologists, doctors, figuring out how do I make this game addicting, how do I make this music addicting, how do I create a reward system in the game that actually releases dopamine. Same thing goes for social media. These are actual, like, they actually change the way that your brain works, kind of like a drug does. So it's not that your kid's weak or lazy. And whenever people say that, I'm like, so is basically 99% of the population like this? No, I mean, it's clearly an attack. There's clearly something going on there. So, what it comes down to is you really need to talk to your kid about discipline in a lot of ways and being able to have that dopamine detox. When I was a kid, my father would say, okay, you get no screen time on Sundays, and then let's go for hikes. Let's spend time outdoors. Let's talk, or maybe you draw or read. And of course, I did not like that. I always argued with him. But then when I was about 15 or so, he's like, okay, you can decide if you want to or not. And at that time, I was old enough where I was like, okay, I like it. I like having some time off. And so when they're old enough, I think they'll understand, they'll want that for themselves too. Maybe finding other parents where you both agree, let's have the kids hang out without phones nearby, without screen time, where they actually have to be social. I think that's really important as well. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought on that.
No, that's totally okay. I think it's encouraging because sometimes, just those different ideas, a variety of ideas, because sometimes it can feel very overwhelming when we're fighting against this machine, that I agree, it has been manipulating us. It has been controlling, and it is a concerted attack on our people. It's sad, and so it can feel like we don't stand a chance. But there are so many options out there, and sometimes you just need to hear a couple ideas to get thinking on it. So that's fantastic. All right. So, any final thoughts that you would like to share that we didn't get to cover, or important things that we should be thinking about?
Well, what I'd say is, what we Glenn and I talk about is definitely more depressing, by nature. So if you're at this point of the video, if you're feeling sad or hopeless, that's not the point of the video. I don't want you to be sad. I hope you feel inspired. I actually, study this all the time, and I feel more hopeful than ever that we're going to enter a golden age of liberty. And so I'm very hopeful for the future. So if you're listening to this and you're a parent of a kid that you're concerned about, don't give up hope ever. My parents never did. I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very happy to have made it out of it. And at those times, I felt so lost. I felt I was at a point of no return. But I don't believe in that. Clearly, I mean, I made it out. So I believe the same for your kids as well, and I'm hopeful for the future of America.
Well, that is so encouraging, truly, because I do remember our first conversation actually saying that to you, that I feel like this is not hopeful. So I guess it's ironic and perfect that I'm wearing this "Make America Hopeful"
Yeah,
again shirt, because you did say that before too, that you were hopeful, and that is good to hear from younger people because you're the future, and we need you to be hopeful, frankly, because you're the ones that are going to be bringing the hope.
exactly. And hope, it takes action too. It's not I'm hopeful and I'm gonna just let it happen. I'm hopeful and I'm gonna do things about it. So I encourage you to take the self responsibility for yourself, your kids. Have your kids take self responsibility and take action because we've been conditioned not to, and that will help us all a lot.
And can you share where people can find you? I know we mentioned your website earlier. Any other
Sure,
resources
yeah,
or
that's a
social
great
media
action to take.
places?
Absolutely, yeah, take action. Go to privacyacademy.com. We've got a
That's
free
right.
newsletter. You can sign up. We do a lot of weekly classes. We have just valuable emails too. And then if you wanted to go the extra step and start the journey yourself, then you can sign up as well. So that'd be fantastic.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you sharing your story and just helping us connect the dots between screens, data, our kids, and all of this stuff.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate everything you guys are doing. It's great.
What a great conversation. I hope you're feeling as inspired as I am and, well, maybe a little more hopeful than before, too. While the challenges of tech and data privacy can feel overwhelming, it's really great to know there are real practical steps we can take. Simple ones like webcam covers and microphone blockers for hardware, all the way up to more complicated, like asking tough questions at school board meetings, which we're not afraid to do, and even simply talking with our kids about what's happening on their screens. Remember that every action counts. Now, don't worry, you don't have to go full Amish to protect your family's privacy. Start small. Make a list of your smart devices. I bet that might wake you up. Research some alternatives. You can start at privacyacademy.com for some great options. And of course, most importantly, keep the conversation going at home. Remember that hope isn't just a feeling, it's something that we build through action and taking personal responsibility. You can learn more about Eric's work at privacyacademy.com. And of course, don't forget to check out m4lacademy.org for more resources, tools, and ways to engage on this and other topics, including SEL, CRT, DEI, gender ideology, CSE, so many more topics. We've got a lot more coming in the future, too. So keep checking back. Thank you so much for joining us today. As James Madison said, the advancement and diffusion of knowledge is the only true guardian of liberty, which, of course, is our mission. So stay curious, stay courageous, and let's keep working together to make America and our schools hopeful again. Class dismissed.